speaker. Fritz J is not known to most of you, but he's well known in the statistical community. He has received numerous honors for his contributions to the statistics profession. There are really too many to list, but I'll mention a few highlights. Each year, the American Statistical Association recognizes the contributions of fewer than 1/3 of 1% of its members by making them fellows, so it's a relatively rare honor. Fritz has been a long-time fellow of the association. He's also a recipient of their Founders Award for his extensive service. And I think probably the thing he is most proud of was that he was the 100th president of the American Statistical Association. And during his presidential year, Fritz is quite an innovator, and during his presidential year, I would say he shook up the organization a bit. And the rest of his awards they go beyond what's listed in the bio, but you can read about them in the bio. Aside from his professional honors, I want to mention some intangibles that characterize Fritz and distinguish him from most other statisticians. He's a person of boundless energy and enthusiasm, someone who never says no. So he's involved in more things than anyone else I know. Elections, statistics and human rights, he writes books, and he's still touching many aspects of the American Statistical Association as an organization. He just never stops, like the Energizer Bunny. And this is a word, he's also one of the most creative people I know, and that's a word, I think a lot of statisticians are creative, but it's kind of almost counterintuitive because you don't think of statisticians as creative. He always has a unique and constructive approach. When you're faced with difficult problems, Fritz is someone you want in the room with you working on a solution because he'll get you there to a good, constructive approach. A colleague once described Fritz as someone who comes up with what sounds at first like a crazy idea, but the more you think about it, the more it starts to make sense until all of a sudden it's not a crazy idea at all, but a really new and promising approach to a problem. The controversy that has swirled around elections since 2000 seems to be rekindled every year in some new race somewhere that something's gone wrong and the media has been all over. It's shaken confidence in elections and is a problem whose solution is important to everyone in this room. I think that this is a room of people who are going to get to solving the problem. Everyone here is doing important work. Fritz is someone who's helping to bring statistics and statistical thinking as a tool to help the real people who will fix the problem, the state and local election officials and legislators.
Turn this on. Does that work? You hear me?
Yep.
I thought that was a pretty creative introduction, Mary. I told her 3 sentences. She's a sampling statistician. I guess she doesn't always do sampling.
I go the other way too.
I'm going to get to it. We were talking about post-election audits, and there's Murphy's corollary. First of all, what's Murphy's law?
Go wrong and will.
Can go wrong will.
And what's the corollary?
It always does.
If you didn't check it, it did go wrong. And whether or not that's actually true, the fact that it's not being checked in a systematic, verifiable way is leading to some of the problems of trust that we have as a society in this system, which we are the oldest, large scale anyway, democracy using. And amazingly, as you heard from the first speaker, there are a lot of newer societies, newer democracies that are doing a lot better. What am I going to talk about? Well, small number. First, I want to talk a little bit about what's called systems thinking, which is an idea that statisticians, the phrase comes from Deming, in which we look at the whole system. Everybody here is a stakeholder in one or two or even three subsystems. We all need to stretch out to look at the whole system. I don't know that anyone here is doing that. I certainly not among us. I should tell you, my wife is an election official. Yeah. And in 2000, we have the television set in the bedroom. In 2000, after the election, things were being thrown at the television. And I finally left the room for a while. And I sort of determined I had to get involved in this so I could get a good night's sleep. And my wife told me, and I think I must tell you it's still true, that you really don't know very much about this. I want to emphasize that I really don't know very much about this. In terms of the total system, maybe most of us would say that. Although each of you have skill sets which make you much more knowledgeable than I am about a whole lot of the system. Anyway, you have to meet my wife. She is not born in the United States. She decided, she's from China, she decided she wanted to be an American. And when she became an American, she got all the way into the system, and that's what brought her, as still a relatively young woman. After all, the average age of people who work in the polls is not that high, not that low. Therein lies the problem given the technology, but you all know that. Let me also talk about a little bit about sample vote verification, which is one of the main issues here. And I'll say a little bit about that as a statistician. And then I'm going to go a little expand that into forensic statistical additional ideas, using some practice that Mary Batcher has been involved in, and others, and just as an illustration. One of the things that will happen here is that I'll be using some of my language, and tomorrow each of you will be using some of your language, and we'll all wonder, you know, can we understand each other, right? One of our goals in being here is to come up with a common language, or a process that leads to a greater understanding, a greater dealing with ordinary English words, but that have specialized technical meanings in the settings we're in here. So I'm sorry if I get into the weeds with some of you. I apologize, but you're going to do it to each other tomorrow, so why not stop? I'm going to talk about exit polls, because I think exit polls, while they have many positive advantages, have been a problem. One of the reasons they're a problem for us is because until recently, we did not think of them as part of the system. I mean, after all, none of you are running exit polls. And yet you're all involved in the election process, heavily involved and very knowledgeable. We need to bring them into the system and deal with them, and I'll give you suggestions on that, especially in terms of if we can make vote verification work, we can probably shift the way exit polls are being used to bring them back to a positive rather than, I would consider, at least in 2004, a negative force. And then we're going to do something which we've been, am I standing in the wrong place? These people over here don't mind, they're asleep. Okay. One of the things that I think we're really doing is we're following, this is the title of a book by Putnam. The first book that he wrote is, which deals with how volunteer organizations get together to do things, is Bowling Alone. You may know that, okay? It was rather depressing, okay, in the end, because it seemed that we had lost our knack as a society to get together and do things voluntarily. This book shows examples of how that can change. And I speak tonight and say this is happening now here, okay? And will be, I think, a cornerstone of things that need to happen in the system as a whole. Let me do a little bit about systems thinking. We have to understand systems thinking. We need to understand the complexity. It is enormous. You know the complexity within the election process itself once you get inside the process. the things that are going on outside the process, the things that statisticians would create problems, help solutions. There's no single systems owner in this process. It's a major issue. Lots of levels of ownership. The opening remarks tonight by Dan talked about levels of ownership of the process. And I compliment the people here who are at those different levels who are recognizing that it's the levels working together that are going to make a difference. The political party role, I don't talk about that. The media role, nobody here is from the media. That's an issue. Is that true?
That was intentional.
That was intentional.
I am happy with it. I wanted it to be intentional because I wanted to say that this is a marketing area for us. Exit polls are, after all, run for the media. Okay? And a lot of things that the media could report, they're not reporting. Maybe it's partly the people who are not in the media's fault. This is what we want: voters' trust and full participation as individuals and as willing to accept the outcome. Let me talk about what I consider a proactive response that's needed, and that's what's being done here. Benchmarking, which is we're learning from each other, moving towards best practices. All right? Benchmarking is a little bit, when you get into it, a little bit more than that, but let's leave it there tonight. And of course, you're already sharing it. Will be tomorrow and Saturday what works. Let me get you a look at this Ishikawa or fishbone diagram. It's important, I think it's important to use some Japanese ideas here because this is a quality issue in large respects. And Ishikawa is one of the great statisticians, Japanese statisticians, along with Deming, whom I mentioned earlier, who's a great American statistician.
It's a zen picture here.
The
The picture is very zen.
Right now. Well, maybe it'll be changing.
Which is an I-Ching idea.
And, okay? And I'm going to put somebody, since Arlene wants me to go a little faster. You heard that? He's thinking no. This. Pardon? You can read this. These are, in the quality business, there are two ways of thinking of it. There's conformance to requirements and fitness for use. What most of us do most of the time, especially people inside the system, is they conform to requirements, legislative requirements, practical requirements, budgetary requirements, and so forth, and they learn from each other. And that's all good, but that for the person outside the system who wants to know, did it work? Because after all, complex systems have to be able to operate in failure mode. Because this is a very complicated system, and it fails all the time. Does that mean it's not fit for use? Well, that's what the verification process is going to say, right? Whether the results are fit for use, even though there are small failures being a relative term, and if the election is close, a small failure may not make it fit for use. But anyway, so this is the step that we're mainly talking about here. Audited votes and voter surveys, exit polls being one voter survey. And I put these two together here because I want to see if we can trade off one kind of thing, which we've been doing a lot of, which is exit polls and other voter surveys, for a kind that we haven't been doing enough of and are essentially trying to get really a big start on with what's going on here. Let me go quicker into this because you're going to spend days on this, and I don't need to do most of it. It's a key to accountability. And if you are successful in making what you're doing visible to the media, you will help your own image, okay, and increase the trust in what you're doing. Okay? If you're being randomly shot at by people who don't understand the system, okay, and you don't have a way to defend yourself, and this is a way to defend yourself, then you're going to have problems, as we've had. It has to have transparency and randomness. I'm very interested in noticing one of the things that I saw in the material about the need for the randomness to be very public and transparent. I've been working in Georgia. That's not the state of Georgia, that's the country of Georgia. There's an argument about, well, whether it's still called the Republic of Georgia when it was in the Soviet Union. And when we did some work over there, I'm still doing work over there, we had to make the randomization very visible. Mechanical randomization, if you're a techie, is a hard problem. Some of you remember the Vietnam lottery? You did 2 years. First year, we don't have to worry about the war. Everyone knows the war was a disaster. The first year was a disaster, a technical disaster. Very difficult to do with. I recommend that you have that kind of transparency and that kind of visibility and that kind of people will understand, ordinary people will understand what you did. It's not hidden in a computer somewhere with random number generators and so forth, okay, which is where I live. And, I'm Buster Brown, I live in the shoe. My dog Ty lives there too. Some of you knew that, right? 3 of you. There has to be a rules of evidence thing. Florida was a classic example where that broke down because it was all being decided afterwards in a very partisan way. I happen to be at University of Chicago, NORC. The media hired us to recount Florida. And we did. And the outcome didn't change. Okay? But one of the problems with that issue is the conditions of engagement in Florida. Those need to be looked at too, but given the conditions of engagement, that's the outcome we had, despite my wife's yelling at the television. It was the thing she was throwing at the television. So one of the things that I think, and Arlene has said this in some material I just read yesterday, I think, that we need to build a body of practice. This is not a light bulb you turn on or off. This is a technology. This is a very difficult thing to do. And audit is really hard, really hard. And you can't audit a system that's not been prepared to be audited. That is just fundamental. And it's an analogy from other settings where I do auditing, but it's also obvious, I hope, to you all. And it's something that the legislatures and the election commissions have to do to prepare the results to be audited. I'm going to talk about some examples that Mary worked on, where I would argue that in 2004, the results may not have been fully audited. I'm talking about audit. Let's talk about these forensic statistical additions. Exploring the official results for anomalies. That's what you do. Right? You get the precincts, all the precincts. You compare them from this year to 4 years ago or whatever. And so looking for anomalies, looking for a place where something doesn't look right. You're obviously confirming outliers and inliers. Inliers is a word that you don't you ordinarily use unless you're a statistician. Inliers is where people make it look right, okay, when they fudge just a little bit. Arlene may talk about this tomorrow too. It's a problem in the election. If you're really clever people who want to beat the system, inliers is the way to go. A small change you can't detect, but that cumulatively changes the outcome. Really hard to do. It's a hard statistical problem. That's why you have to go and actually count again in a way that is transparent and can actually be done independently of the machines and so forth. You have to link precedent to past patterns, of course, I recommend that. And you may want to use that idea in doing some stratification when you're doing the sampling. Well, that may be a sophistication that's not needed right now. And developing lessons learned databases. One of the things is that we need to be learning from election to election, and we need to be learning this across the country. We need to be sharing good things and bad things. and not just those that get filtered, get into the media, and get misreported, or mistold, or incompletely. If we're only using that kind of information, anecdotal information, not systematically collected information, the rate at which we improve the system may be extremely slow, and it's maybe arguable that it won't happen at the level we want. Here's an example of a little trending in, this is Ohio. These are the presidential elections from 84 to 04. And we're looking at county level data. We're looking at the difference between the carry vote predicted versus actual. So we actually can make a prediction from 2000 what the Democratic vote will be in 2004. And, you know, using the data from 84 to 2000. And that's what we did. And we compared. We did other methods as well. And you see that most of them are pretty close to the prediction. The big counties, Hamilton, Franklin, Cuyahoga, or not, but you're, and there are a lot of votes there. Now, Cuyahoga is the one that probably made the biggest difference in Ohio, since it's such a strong Democrat county. Huge number of D-votes in Cuyahoga. Let's just,
You might need to interpret that graph for people.
what's going on is that this is the difference. We had an actual result in 2004, official result. We don't know if it's actual official result, and we made a prediction of what it should have been given the history for that county. County's not the right unit of analysis. You want to use precinct, and that's the next slide. But this is available to you. Counties don't usually change boundaries of precincts, so you don't have as much problem. And when the difference between the prediction and the actual is small, it'll be close to zero. It'll be right here. And of course, it's spread out this way because the size of the vote is a county. Okay? And that's what's going on. The three big counties, of course, are late.
Could you go further into that? What does that mean for Cuyahoga County? That more people voted than predicted? What does that mean?
More people, what it means is that the difference was the difference between what Kerry was predicted to get based on the traditional Democratic vote in Cuyahoga, and the actual, okay, was Cuyahoga actually was. That Cuyahoga was actually higher, at a higher vote based on the trends in Cuyahoga than Kerry prediction would have given. We have another method here which shows the reverse for two of these three counties. So I'm not claiming one is better than the other. When you're in this world, unlike the world of vote verification, you're living with some assumptions based on models. And models are useful, to quote Deming, all models are false, some are useful. So I don't claim this, it's something you could have done without having done an actual vote verification. Here's Cuyahoga.
Does that saying that he got more than predicted?
Yes. Yes. Well, if you do it the other way, and I don't have that graphic, two of those three counties, he got less. And frankly, he got more. So you're from Ohio, so you know this. But again, the others. So I had these two models. They have different answers. I gave up at that. This is precinct level data. Okay. You see some outliers, but pretty straight line prediction. Okay. We're looking at precincts between. This is just one election back because the precincts boundaries changed. You can't go up much further back than that unless we change the boundaries. Put two or three precincts together and compare them. Let's talk about exit polls. Right. I'm going to say a word about Warren Machowski. Warren Machowski is a friend of mine. He's the father of exit polls. And all along in the 2004 controversy, he was saying, you're not supposed to be using exit polls to to do what you say, which says that Terry won Ohio. That's what the expo said. That's not the way you use them. You then went on to say there's been traditional Democratic bias in the exit polls over many elections. It was more in 2004 than in some other elections, but it was there all along. In close elections, it matters. In not so close elections, it doesn't. Warren is gone now. He's died August 2006. I'm involved with my colleague, Wendy Albee, in putting a book out about exit polling, in which we're going to try to get Warren's message, which I've just recounted, in the record permanently. It will not go away, this problem will not go away of abusing exit polls unless you succeed in doing vote verification. As my good boss, one of my bosses in New York used to say, takes a horse to deal with. You've got to change, you've got to have another thing to focus the media's attention on. Otherwise, they'll keep going back to this and not use it properly. Exit polls are good stuff, but not for this purpose. And unless there are huge differences, they can't be relied on as fitness for use criteria. So it's not a substitute. And it's a weak fitness for use standard. And very large, yet when there are very large gaps, Ukraine, for example, recently, okay, you saw the difference was big enough. But of course, in Ukraine, they also saw people being put on buses and moving from place to place and voting again and again. That was probably more compelling than the exodus. Anyway, it's badly misunderstood, and we need to redirect our attention, and then we need to replace it. I think I'm going to skip these. This is a little more stuff about exit polls, and we don't need to look at this because we're running out of time. We'll just get through this. I'm sorry, I can't do this any better. Let's go to this, which I think is where you want to get to tonight. Suffice it to say, in the stuff I didn't show you. we can go back if you want, but I don't think that's too random. Well, you may, like, there's enough people here. Some of you actually brought it, right? Speed read this. Suffice it to say that there are other evidential indicators that exit polling, at least as we saw it in Ohio in 2004, okay? And also I might say, because I was actually running the exit polls, one of the people running exit polls in Little County in 2004. I actually wasn't in Ohio in 2004, although I've been in Ohio in all the elections since then. The same problem, which is that the official vote and the exit poll did not agree. There was this Democratic bias, which I ended up believing after looking at Mary's work and another colleague, Dr. Yanlu, and I helped her, I helped them. The thing to rely on was a statistical analysis. We didn't have the way to do vote verification that you're going to be talking about, so because it was too late to do that. But it's needed, and I hope it is going to happen. So I mentioned Better Together already, and mentioned this as possibly a case study in using this method as a country. Go back to methods we used, especially in the 19th century and into the 30s. Didn't you already have achieved that? This cooperation among already high, your cooperation is already high among election officials. I'm awfully pleased by it. I hope it gets higher. One of the things is there isn't really competition across state here. There can be enormous amounts of cooperation and learning how to use methods. They don't work everywhere the same because the laws are different and other demographics are different, but there are things that can be done that you can learn from each other. You also need to bring in the skilled outsiders. This was mentioned at the beginning tonight. And of course, we need to learn to communicate with each other. And I demonstrated to you that my communication skills need to be improved. But perhaps it's symmetric. Perhaps we all need to listen a little differently. In a short talk like this, I can't get it all set, but maybe in an interactive mode, we can get to what really matters, okay? I do an awful lot of work overseas in a lot of languages, not just versions of English, like I'm talking tonight, but in versions of other countries' languages, including Islamic, which you should ask me about later. A lovely place. So we need to include and inform the critics. This is the most important step. And you have an opportunity to begin that with what you're doing here. And with the reaching out for accountability that this process is achieving, you gain a great deal of credibility. Because you are holding yourselves accountable, or letting yourselves be held accountable. Rather than let somebody else invent something like an exit poll or some other method, anecdotal method, which slams you. Okay? And that's a major problem. So what is about this media marketing? You need to get to them ahead of time. You need to predict what you're going to do so they pay attention to you and not to somebody else who's a disgruntled person, okay, who may have a single, maybe factual, but it's not predictive or representative of the whole system. The distinction between an anecdotal piece of information and a systematically collected piece of information is huge. And you're going to be doing it systematically and efficiently. You could seize this moment here to bring some media attention to this effort, to what you achieve today, tomorrow, and Saturday. And I talked to Mark briefly about the fact that he had been killing himself putting this thing together with other people. And I said to him, and he didn't even flinch, I said to him, you realize that 60% of the work is after you finish. He didn't even flinch. He actually knew it. I mean, I thought I was saying something, but he didn't know. But he did know. And maybe it's even more. Mark is more of an expert than I am. But you really need to seize this moment and make the media realize that you're going to change the way you're going to do things, so they're going to have to change the way they report things. There are new tools and learning styles that are coming out of this process. No need for me to list them all. A lot of them have already been seen in the book that you have. I don't know how much you've looked at that. Good stuff. I think we need to begin conducting demonstration sample audits right away. Arlene says this. Others of you who have experience in managing technologies or bringing technologies from an idea to an implementation, a successful implementation, will understand. Doing these in the heat of that 2008, way dangerous and late. Doing them in a primary, doing them as a teaching mode, doing them in a single precinct, demonstration precinct. Way to go. Totally the way to go. Do not take the risk of trying this with inexperienced, still potentially unskilled staff being trained at that moment by on-the-job training to do this. You will not be happy with it. Do it ahead of time. Do it ahead of time. Plan it in. Start right away, though. Start right away. Let me talk about something else, which is, I mean, I've been poo-pooing exit polls, and we have a book coming out on them. What is he saying? He doesn't want you to buy his book? No, I do. Because I want you to respect the contributions Warren Matofsky made. And several of you in the room are actually contributing to this book. Well, let me talk about something that's called an national election scorecard, which is a way for your customers, the voters, to tell you how well you did. And which is, in fact, what we did in Bernalillo in 2004 and in Ohio in 2006, in some counties in Ohio, Franklin County, and other places in 2006. Okay, in which I hope will be done in more exit poll counties in 2008. But you can't do an exit poll in every county in the United States, you can't afford it. But you can do a national survey, telephone survey, that's linked to the exit polls, and that's what we're going to try to do, NORC. We've already done, I would say, a proof of concept in Ohio in 2006. And one of the things that I'm asking you to consider is whether this is something you can point to say, we did better than average, that this one Florida 13, this one precinct that caused all this attention in 2006, that is really an aberration, okay? That basically things worked okay. I mean, a lot of people think they worked okay, but where's the evidence? It's all anecdotal. Your customers have not spoken in a scientific way. I think this is an important thing to do, and it's an important thing to get people's attention that this could be presented the day after the election. That your customers thought you did a good job, that the lines weren't too long, that the problems with the machines weren't too many, that people helped you when you went in. Those kinds of things that are under your control as election officials. That they worked well across the country. Not everywhere, not perfectly, but much better than perhaps people, your critics, would have thought they did. I recommend this. This costs money. I'm going to try with my colleague, Dr. Ed Morrow, who's sitting here, who now is hiding, to raise the money so we can actually do this for OA. We have enough, we think, evidence that will work. And that will put the horror stories. Don't tell me there won't be horror stories in 2008. There's going to be horror stories in 2008, right? This is such a complicated system. It's got to fail somewhere. It's too complicated not to fail. Okay? But if that failure is seen to be limited, seen to be narrow, seen to be easily dealt with by evidence that it's succeeded nearly everywhere else, that makes a huge difference to the credibility and trust that people have in the system. But you can't just do what I'm saying here without the vote verification. Because this is only one part of what is going on. Because people can go in here and they can be fooled. If you don't do the vote verification, this won't, I think, be enough. So you have to do it. So the system has to be fully auditable. Talked about that a little bit. You need to prepare the data ahead of time. Don't just plan the sample of this election. Look at previous elections for the same precincts that you're going to be planning the verification, the vote verification. I think that's crucial to analyzing what you're doing. And continue to use, I want to use ex post. They should continue. And we're working with Joe Lenski, who's part of the Edison group that Warren worked with. They're going to do it again in 08, I believe. And they should. But they should do it in a way where they're not going to be, what their results are not going to be used to attack things that you do. Here's some more examples. I'm almost done. I think we need to train election officials in these new methods. Very important. You're going to talk about that, so I don't need to say any more about that. And we, of course, need to work on the software issue. I don't think the software issue is addressed fully in the vote verification process. It is partial, not fully. And that's it. Many thanks. My email is there, so customer complaints can be provided or followers. Thank you all.
Thanks very much, Fritz. Takes a horse to beat a horse. I like it. A couple of quick reminders. For one thing, if you want to get in Fritz's ear, he's not here tomorrow, so you're going to have to buy him a brandy or something tonight. So go get it. In the morning, we are across the hall at Palm, not this room, which is Willow. Did I get that right? Palm. Kind of a Florida thing. And 9 o'clock sharp. I think in your book it says 9:10 or something silly like that. 9 o'clock sharp, that's what it's supposed to be. So 9 o'clock in the morning. And thank you all again for being here, and go forth and have a pleasant evening. Thank you.